when we say left, oh, let me speak for myself. When I say left, I very clearly mean economic populist left. And I started adopting left as a self-identifier as opposed to progressive, precisely because very quickly, I would say it really settled in hard in 2020. Everyone was rushing to obscure the difference between themselves and Bernie because Bernie was obviously popular. And Chait like acknowledges this, but in a backhanded way in the piece. He basically says, Bernie somehow, despite losing, took over the Democratic Party in 2020 by virtue of the fact that everyone else was pretending to be him. He doesn't say pretending, I'm saying pretending. But he says everybody rushed to get to the left of Bernie and consequently now has to own how far left the party is, ignoring the fact that the party was so opposed to Bernie that, of course, Obama picked up the phone and orchestrated the mass dropout event that enabled Joe Biden to win. Now, in this piece, he says Joe Biden won because he was the only one, quote unquote, like sensible enough to maintain centrist politics. And that's obviously what's popular because Joe Biden won. Putting that sort of revisionist history to the side, all this entire argument is able to be made by these people because there's a failure to even acknowledge the existence of a economic populist left, much less use terminology that would distinguish it from a sort of a progressive left that does in fact prioritize identity politics that I would not describe as left in the least. I would call it the progressive center. Progressive in some ways has become a kind synonym for centrist, normie, democratic politics.
I think that's a really good point. There is, I think, a lot of advantage to Chait and abundance world to sort of smush a bunch of different impulses into the category of leftism because it lets them kind of ignore the super majoritarian popularity of economic populism. And again, that's the core, that should be the core lesson of the last 10 years. People are pissed off, and there are ways that anger can be channeled to fascism, right? To polarize people against immigrants and trans folks and Antifa and Palestinians. And there are ways that can be channeled against the actual causes that are making people pissed off, as Bernie does. And the one other thing I'd add, I think it's worthwhile to note that while people like Bernie have resisted that kind of performative wokeism that is, I think, very off-putting for a lot of voters. They have not jumped to on the sort of centrist bandwagon to throw vulnerable groups under the bus, right? Like Bernie doesn't want to do dumb shit like the stuff that's been weaponized against him, but he does think we should protect people, and he understands that like the way we do that is to have this to tell the truth about the system, to mobilize people's anger in ways that make sense, that are real, and that it's not actually that useful of an electoral strategy to just throw people under the bus, divorced from like the tent pole of the larger populist vision. Trump didn't win just because he threw people under the bus. He won because he created this axis of struggle of the people versus who he was saying is the enemy in this moment when people are looking for that. And his way of doing that was then throwing people under the bus. But just throwing people under the bus by itself, Kamala Harris basically did that, right? We tried that. It didn't work.
Yeah, and the irony is her failure to make it work is not, as you so accurately and compellingly argue in your piece, a function of the reality that anybody who hates those groups and wants them to suffer as a priority is going to pick Trump. Like, he's the real deal. Why pick the discount version of the hater? Instead, they'll attribute her failure to, well, how could she have won? She was a Black woman. Or, oh, how could she have won? She wasn't hard enough on trans people. And the elephant in the room, especially given that this piece was published on October 8th, is that he doesn't mention Palestine at all. If we're talking about populist policies that could have rehabilitated her campaign and caused people to across the island vote for her. I know I say this in every episode. I'm sorry, it bears repeating. The number one issue cited by 2020 voters who declined to vote for Harris in 2024 was Palestine. And I had this thought when I was reading your piece, Erin, that Gaza is the new Medicare for all. And here's what I mean. Every one of these, oh no, we've got to move to the center pieces because it's a popular thing to do, ignores that Medicare for all persists in being a policy that is basically unmatched in terms of public popularity, with 88% of Democrats being fans and 49% of Republicans and like 60 odd percent of independents. We are in the middle of a government shutdown fight where Democrats are making hay out of healthcare subsidies under the ACA that only exist because of the failures of the ACA to begin with, because people's premiums are so high absent these subsidies. And I sometimes feel like a broken record when I'm saying, I've been sitting here for like 5 years going, oh, but what Medicare for all is so popular, Medicare for all is so popular. But like, I get why Bernie does it, because fundamentally it is the thing that if gets broader acknowledgement and acceptance, the same way that the popularity of like ending arms support for Israel cannot be acknowledged by all of these people trying to figure out what went wrong. It's the keystone of their entire misinformation campaign. You can't pretend to be pragmatic because you're moving to where the people are while ignoring that there are a whole slate of policies that are incredibly popular the Democratic Party won't touch with a 10-foot pole. And I guess I want to put to both of you why you think it is that even Bernie and the squad or whomever else at least ostensibly supports these policies haven't been able to make more political hay of that reality.
Well,
Such a big
I think it's really, sorry.
Oh, no, I was going to let you answer because I got to think about that one for a minute. Yeah.
I mean, I think first of all, it's worth noting that, you know, when we go back over the history, the one of these moderate nominees who won a presidential election over the last decade, it was Biden in 2020. And that was the one of these elections where you could see at least an effort to sort of welcome the progressive wing of the party in as a coalition member, right? I think there was some effort by the Biden camp before the 2020 election to engage in that.
Remind me what that looked like.
I mean, there was
I won't disagree and be such a hater, but you're gonna have to refresh my memory on what that looked like.
And I don't want to put, I could be overemphasizing the impact here, but there was the Unity Commission. There was a set of policies that were agreed on. And that was the one election that was won.
Which were those? Was that where?
And it was
that where Bernie was like, "You're gonna do a $15 minimum wage, right?" And Biden goes, "I swear,
right,
promise,
exactly.
on my honor as a Biden."
And it was, there's lots of ways, I think, towards the end, but by the mid and end of Biden's term, that the progressive wing of the party was no longer being welcomed as such a member of the coalition, but Gaza was is the main, most flagrant way in which that happened. And then, as you said, that was the number one issue that folks who voted before and then didn't vote. So all that's to say, I think it is fundamentally key, and I think we're seeing in a number of races right now that people are starting to make to see the political value of differentiating there. Graham Plattner in Maine, some other folks are making this message of we should be putting our taxes into healthcare and schools here in America, not bombs to kill children overseas. I think that's an incredibly powerful message, and it's one that we should be talking about in primaries and general elections nonstop.
Yeah, I think there's a kind of an abundance related issue here too, which is like, there's Trump won, Democrats had a terrible performance in 2024, and the abundance camp comes out here with the argument that, okay, we can fight fascism with permit reform, which is really so silly that, I mean, it's just like, yeah, sure, like reform the permits where they need to be reformed or whatever. But it's like, obviously that's not enough to meet the moment, like coming out with, ceasing weapons to Israel, like Medicare for all. Like, we need something big. We need several big things, actually. Of course, like giving like incentive grants to cities and states to rezone, which Biden already did. Like, that's not going to win. And I think even a lot of the people who are the pundits involved with abundance, the major funders of like abundance related projects, like a lot of it is about having a way to have like extremely pro-Israel Democrats not talk about Israel. Like they come in and they pretend like, oh, hey, like the right, the left, we all just have to meet in, just on this kind of good governance, permit reform, rezoning stuff. But like, if you look at what they believe, like about, Israel and Palestine, like, like there's some of the kind of further right Democrats of the party, but they can't come out and say, they can't like run on that because it's so unpopular right now.
Yeah, it is a really kind of a three-card Monty that's being run. I mean, speaking of Israel, Kate, I remember somewhere in your piece there was like, what was it, Bitcoin plan that was described as the Zionization oh, here it is, tech Zionism, an alternative governance structure called tech Zionism. What is that, Kate?
It's truly so crazy. So there is this Silicon Valley billionaire. His name is Balaji Srinivasan, who has this idea called network states. And basically, they're like libertarian, tech bro, cryptocurrency utopias. There's already one called Prospera. It's in Honduras in a special economic zone. Like, there are special economic zones, throughout the world. But basically, they want it to be more or less Dubai for tech bros, where there's like no laws. They can do like medical, like biohacking, experimentation, whatever, construction they want, regardless of like worker safety or, fire safety or whatever. And like, the idea is that it's kind of like an opt-in, like libertarian paradise. And it's sort of the latest iteration of the seasteading idea, which like Peter Thiel was championing back in like 2008. And, Balaji calls it network states. And when he talked about tech Zionism, he was talking about like turning San Francisco into like I mean, it's so crazy. It's going to sound like I'm lying, but I'm not. Like, he was talking about turning San Francisco into like a kind of tech, like explicitly tech ruled paradise where like the tech people and their allies would like pay off the cops in large amounts to like basically harass the non-tech people out of the city. I mean, it's just so wacko that they basically want to take like an idea like Prospera and like bring it to the United States. And it's had like a few different, like they've talked about freedom cities where Trump would do these like special economic zones on, federal lands potentially. And if you look at it, it's like it's all the same group that's like lobbying for abundance, like Tyler Cowen, who is at George Mason University, I think, or was. He's the head of Emergent Ventures, which is like a big sort of abundance agenda player. Like, he's an investor in some of these like tech bro states. I mean, it's just weird. It's like they've just had like versions of the same sort of like, what if we build like a tech bro paradise and it's, on the open sea. Okay, that's not going to work. On Mars. Okay, that's not going to work. Okay, how about like Greenland? How about like San Francisco's Presidio? And it's just the same stupid, crazy, wacko stuff again and again.
Yeah, you mentioned that there was an effort to go. One of them went to try to buy Greenland, and once again, they were like, "We're a country, we're not for sale."
Exactly. Yeah.
And then there was an effort, in Northern California somewhere, but the farmers rebelled and they just couldn't get the land together.
Yeah, in Solano County, basically, like there was this kind of, if you've seen the movie Chinatown, it's kind of like, it was like this secret entity buying up all the lands in Solano County, and the farmers were like, WTF, like what's happening? Like, is this, is it an amusement park? Is this like, a foreign military plan? Like, what's going on here? And then eventually it comes out that it's this group of tech investors, including Patrick Collison, who is one of the biggest funders of abundance related things, Reid Hoffman, Mark Andreessen, just like the who's who of like evil Silicon Valley guys, a lot of Republicans, but also, the people who are like the remaining sort of Democrats, and they wanted to like build their like network state type of thing there. But like in order for that to happen, the farmers had to like vote to like rezone their farmland for like a major city. And they're like, no, like what's in it for us? Like, this is not what we signed up for. And also, this was so creepy and secretive, and we don't trust these weird billionaires. So it failed, and now they're trying to do like boat building stuff, but like it's so wacko that it just sounds conspiratorial to talk about it. And when I first wrote that article, people were kind of like, dude, are you like the bulletin board guy? But then like over the past few months, people are like, oh my God, this is actually true.
No, this is great. It reads sort of like, and I mean this is a compliment, like Whitney Webb level, like, and this is connected to this. It is like the bulletin board guy. But I do think reading this helped me put the pieces together in a way that felt more comprehensive and frankly scarier than a lot of other things that I read, because you also don't ignore, I mean, you'll get a piece that like talks explicitly about the race science part of it, and then you'll get a piece that talks about more like the tech part or the corporate corruption or the Elon Musk and the government contracts piece. But it all being together like this, I think paints a picture of what the broader agenda is in a way that's very comprehensive and useful. When you were talking, Kate, I was struck by how open this push is. You've got these guys saying things about how like they expect AI to take all put everybody out of business, and like they don't believe in democracy, and all these crazy wild quotes. And how they've recruited folks like Ezra Klein in the mainstream and among liberals and perceived as, in quotation marks, left by some portion of the public to advance this agenda. And they're going for things like freedom cities and buying up land in California and Honduras, offshore, Gaza, doing whatever they can do. Meanwhile, there is this assault on what might be considered the left parallel, which is like a sanctuary city. Even as we collectively, and polls reflect this, as a country are not happy with ICE rounding up people extrajudicially, including American citizens and green card holders, people with legal status. And we are, not happy with any of it. I can't help but feel that part of the difficulty and the pivot toward real resistance is we've been living in a world where even liberal media has been vilifying sanctuary cities. Liberal politicians have been throwing them under the bus, hoping that they'll get an electoral advantage from it, even while people in those cities, people in my own city in DC, have shown extraordinary heroism in chasing away ICE agents, warning people as they advance upon targets, Home Depots, communities that are considered targets because they just have brown people in them, et cetera. And there's an asymmetry between, or there's a lag, I should say, from, it feels like Democratic electeds who spent more time vilifying sanctuary cities, and the people who have been very quick to realize that that's the last line of defense in a world where we don't really have a resistance party. And I can't help but reflect, the most recent episode was about this, so I won't get into it, but even reflect on how in the movie One Battle After Another, the new Paul Thomas Anderson movie, there seems to be what charitably could be described as a disinterest in the underlying politics of the resistance organization Fringe 75, which is the subject of the film, or even a discomfort with, am I going to say, yeah, these people are good, they're doing a good thing to violently resist and free people from immigration detention centers, et cetera. And that's scary. It's scary to me that while they are so openly doing PR for their insanely unpopular white supremacist, techno-feudalist agenda, the liberals are still so precious and seemingly insecure about what we're we're lumped in with them, even fighting for.
Yeah, I mean, it was an interesting thing in 2024 because big tech, which I'm using to mean, billionaires in general, there's a collection of them, Elon Musk, Peter Thiel, they pretty much bought the Republican Party. I mean, obviously, like Doge was the most obvious example. But these like AI weirdo transhumanist freaks, like, just to be able to kind of like do whatever they wanted, like they just paid to have their preferred policies implemented by Donald Trump. And there's a little bit of conflict, with kind of like the Steve Bannon wing, but for the most part, like they just bought Republicans. And how I see the abundance agenda stuff and what I argued in the piece is the abundance agenda stuff, that is their effort to make sure that even if Democrats win in 2028, like they're still in the driver's seat. And people like Iglesias and Ezra Klein, like they're talking about stuff in more liberal language, but like the basic idea is, deregulate, 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 both like land use, AI, various like medical tech stuff. Like it's all the things that these same billionaires want. And they, it's kind of crazy to think about this, but like to those guys like Reid Hoffman, like Patrick Collison, like they think that Biden was like way too far left because of Lena Khan, because of like the kind of small concessions he made to unions, and they're basically trying to make sure that somebody like as left as Joe Biden never happens again, and that they're in the driver's seat no matter who is elected in 2028.
And I'll just say, I mean, you described these freaks as such, and they are, and I think like most people see that and don't like it, right?
Yeah.
Getting back to this, like, Ezra Klein's question of how do we build a majoritarian Democratic coalition that can win, which should be the question that we are all like grappling with to make sure that we can stop the fascist takeover that's happening right now. And again, like the answer is right in front of us. Talking about big tech and AI, I think that opposition to what's happening on that front is a super majoritarian issue, right? People don't like it's happening to their kids. People don't like what's happening in their communities. We're seeing these fights against big tech and AI data centers in not blue or progressive areas getting overwhelming popular support, right? Centers getting shut down because of this just like mass community coming together saying, no, we don't want our energy bills to go up because we're going to subsidize these motherfuckers. We don't want all our water to get sucked up for them. We don't want our air to get dirtied up for these people. It is, we talked about Medicare for all. We talked about like ending genocide. It is one of these potentially incredibly powerful issues that any party with half a brain should be running against in a big way. Like this is something that can mobilize a lot of voters as part of that sort of top bottom polarization that we need to get the supermajority. And some people, there are people I respect who say like populism and abundance, these things can coexist. I don't know why you get like so worked up about it. But when you think about the way that this movement or whatever we want to call it is being funded by big tech and AI and is functioning to sort of stop the Democratic Party from taking that stance that would be very politically advantageous, in addition to being substantively the right thing to do. This is why we lose, right? This is it. It is not Chait's like whatever blaming the left. This is why, because the forces of capital are working to make sure that our party does not rise to this populist moment and build the kind of coalitions that we could be doing that the Democratic Party has done in the past with the New Deal, right? FDR did not win a majority by like being I'm going to compromise, I'm going to do X or Y that people are suggesting. He did it by saying, the forces of capital are my enemy and I'm proud to be their enemy. That's the kind of energy we need. And people are rightfully mad in communities around the country about what data centers are doing and what is, what are the leaders of the Democratic Party being persuaded to to do. Let's eviscerate permitting processes that allow these communities to come and try to stop these projects. That's
Exactly.
it is a Trojan horse for big tech and big AI, and we should treat it with the kind of seriousness that that calls for.
Yeah, and it's specifically, and this is kind of just another way of saying what you're saying, which is like, yeah, like permit reform and progressive policies could exist and populist policies could exist for sure. I mean, like Zoran's kind of trying to do some of that stuff, but abundance as such, like the donor funded project, it is specifically a weapon against populism. Like their answer to I mean, I'm going to have trouble even getting through this without laughing. Like their answer to Medicare for all, like what we should do instead of like Medicare for all is like fight the American Medical Association of doctors because of like a kind of residency cap that they supported many years ago that they've since changed their position on for like decades. And it's not even the reason we don't have enough residencies for doctors. That has to do with like funding for, Medicare. But like just the idea that like you could just sort of take on this one kind of powerless group instead of doing something to really lower healthcare costs, like having Medicare for all. I mean, like, it's just so stupid, and it's never intended to be popular. Like, it's not a project to reach voters. They're pretending it kind of is, and Ezra Klein is out here, saying, but like, aside from, like a group of like upper middle class New York Times readers who are like dedicated neoliberal ideologues or whatever, like this is just an elite persuasion movement. This is like a project to persuade Pete Buttigieg, not to persuade like your neighbor.
Yeah, I as you guys were both talking, I was thinking to myself why I feel so almost insecure. Like I have to talk myself up increasingly to saying Medicare for all. Like I feel like I have to apologize for it. Like I know I said it before. Like even Gaza at this point. Like I know we all know, but it was Gaza, and like that's a problem. that's a problem. There is a way that these abundance folks, the corporate Dems, understand that novelty has a certain power, that they are branding themselves as like big brains who thought up new strategies, and like this time it'll be different. This time we've got a new thing for you to glom onto. And the instinct that I feel pulled by is to say, well, we got to shake it up. Like we gotta compete in the marketplace of ideas.
Yeah.
But like, no, they're trying to get you off your mark. Because your mark is so effective, and it completely obliterates their whole like full popularism take on just economic populism. And to your point, Aaron, earlier about how what a broad coalition could also be brought under the like we hate AI umbrella. I saw today as we're recording this, Matt Walsh of all people, the What is a Woman guy, tweet. It's weird that we can all clearly see how AI is about to wipe out millions of jobs all at once, destroy every artistic field, make it impossible for us to discern reality from fiction, and destroy human civilization as we know it. And yet not one single thing is being done to stop it. We aren't putting up any fight whatsoever. That guy?
Yeah.
That guy gets it. And we don't have this kind of reflected in popular politics. Not to mention that as we were recording this, we're like a day out from a news cycle all about how AI has a disproportionate part of our economic growth and is this enormous bubble that's poised to burst. Here I'm reading from, I think, Bloomberg. AI now accounts for an astonishing 40% share of U.S. GDP growth this year, and some analysts believe that estimate doesn't fully capture the AI spend, so the real share could be even higher. AI companies have accounted for 80% of the gains in U.S. stocks so far in 2025. 80% of all stock growth is AI.
Yeah.
And this is not the one of the galvanizing fights that the Democratic Party is taking on.
And by the way, like Trump is all in on this, right? His administration is now completely can't not just be tied to. They are the foundation of this. They're putting massive amounts of money in. They're doing everything they can to support the growth of these incredibly unpopular AI data centers. maybe that's in part because they also know that it's a way to continue, their fossil fuel subsidy survival campaign. But it's just, it is it is one of the very many issues in which Donald Trump is very, very clearly an enemy of the people, an enemy of how most people want to see their lives and improve their stake in our society. And the fact that we are not running with it is political malpractice, and it's not an accident that
It's not
it's
an
at the same
accident.
moment that millions and millions of dollars have been put into a movement to convince Democrats that this stuff is all great and we should just allow it to be built without any opportunities for communities to weigh in.
Hey YouTube, thanks for watching. Just a reminder that this is a podcast. You can catch an extra premium episode every Monday for $5 a month at patreon.com/badfaithpodcast. That's patreon.com/badfaithpodcast for $5 a month, an extra episode every week. Additionally, please do consider liking this video, subscribing to this channel. It helps us out. It helps independent media beat the algorithm. We appreciate you. And as always, keep the faith.